Merry Christmas Eve, John. You're watching DeProgram with Ted Rall and John Kiriakou.
Hi, Ted.
It's Christmas Eve 2025, and happy Christmas to everyone. Lots to talk about, as always. A little housekeeping first. Please like, share, follow the show. Donate if you feel like it and if you're able to. And we are much appreciating. It looks like we're hitting some good numbers. We literally just overnight hit 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. So that's exciting. Seems like a benchmark worth celebrating. And we're going to be not on the air. We're taking tomorrow off, although we do have a Christmas message for you tomorrow if you choose to tune in, and then which we pre-recorded yesterday. And then we're going to have a live show as usual, Friday, December 26th at 9 a.m. Eastern time. So do tune in. Good excuse to break away from the fam if you feel like it. And we will be here. It's going to be a 2-hour call-in show. So the first hour is going to be the regular show. So I should say it's a 2-hour / call-in show, not a 2-hour call-in show. The last hour will be call-in. So whatever happens over the next day or two, we'll be discussing, and we will, take your questions about anything and everything live on the air using the Discord server. Robbie will come on and explain how that all works a little bit later on in the show today and also on Friday morning. But that's the housekeeping, basically the big stories of today, among others, and anything that you guys want to talk about in the YouTube or the Rumble chat are the big apparent gas explosion at this nursing home northeast of Philadelphia. There's now a 20-point U.S.-Ukraine plan. Donald Trump would love to have everything in the bag by tomorrow. That doesn't seem very likely. But anyway, things are moving there. We'll talk about the developments and what the Ukrainians have agreed to there. Also, German lawmakers are accusing their Alternative for Deutschland colleagues of spying for Russia because they ask for a lot of detailed information about German defenses and so on. And finally, I'm glad that we're talking about this because it's the kind of thing that a lot of other shows are probably going to give short shrift to, which is the death of this key Libyan general and seven other people, including crew, in this small plane crash in Turkey. So, John, any preferences, or should we just do some questions first?
Let's just jump right into it.
Let's jump into it. What would you like to talk about first?
Well, first, is it rational? Asks if I got a haircut. I did not get a haircut. I'm sorry to say that we got 11 inches of snow last night, which did something to the water, to the pipes, to the pumps. I don't know what the heck. And we have no water. So I was able to put together enough of a couple of droplets to make a half a cup of coffee.
Thank God.
And I decided that was more important than taking a shower today.
Yeah, it's funny. I get asked sometimes if I have a haircut, and when I haven't, and I don't know, my hair does transmogrifies and does strange things. Maybe it's an age thing. I never liked my hair. It's always been.
I don't like my hair either. It's getting thinner and thinner and thinner. I don't know.
I've never liked my hair. It's always been like flyaway.
Right.
And, there was years ago. I had a review of my work in the New York Times, and it was kind of useless. Basically you're looking for like a great phrase or a sentence, like, Ted Rall is the answer to, everything, blah, blah, blah. But, New York Times, but like, it was kind of like not written that way. And they said at some point they said mop-headed political cartoonist Ted Rall, like I was a member of the Beatles. And so my publisher was like, has a gag on the back of the book, but mop-headed New York Times. Anyway, we didn't do that. I kind of wish we had. I think it would have been funny. All right, yeah. What should we do first? Nursing home, Ukraine?
Yeah, let's do this nursing home.
Okay, this is your neck of the woods, sort of.
Yeah, sort of. There's nothing you want more than your elderly parent to be safe and happy and, warm and taken care of. And you go to all this trouble to put them in a nursing home that you find that if you can't take care of them yourself, that where they will be safe and taken care of. And then it blows up, of all things. So the fire chief of this took place in, I think it was Bristol, Pennsylvania, just
Right.
north of Philadelphia. Said, well, there was a gas leak, and there was a this leak and a that leak, and it was some kind of a problem with the piping, and the place blew up. It was big enough for the governor to rush over there and make a statement. He said something that was a little bit scary. He said, at least 2 dead. These are old people, sick people. And, this is going to be quite a shock to them that their home just blew up and killed 2 of their friends. But it goes to something deeper. It's not the fact that it blew up. It's that we warehouse so many of our elderly in this country.
Mm-hmm.
We don't take care of our parents. Ted, I know that you had a similar experience that I did, where you're an only child, but you took care of your mom. And when my mom was sick and dying, my brother and sister and I actually fought over who got to take care of her.
Oh, that's nice.
Seriously.
Good values. Seriously.
And what we ended up doing was my mom wanted to die in her own home. And so I would drive to Pennsylvania for a week. Then my sister would fly in for a week. Then my brother would fly in for a week. And then usually a 4th week, one of her sisters did it. And then we would repeat the whole thing all over again. But, we had, my ex-wife and I had an au pair years and years ago. And part of the au pair program was that they had to take a class, right? Each semester that they were living with us, they had to take a class. And so they all took this English as a second language class at the Northern Virginia Community College. Well, our first au pair was from Thailand. Her English wasn't very good. And I went to pick her up after class one day, and I said, what did you learn? And she said, our teacher told us that Americans treat their pets better than they treat their parents. And I said, you know what? That's true.
It is true.
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah. No.
So anyway, I have a lot of feelings about this terrible explosion. And it's not just about the explosion. It's about the way we treat our parents.
Yeah. And people could say, well, gas leaks happen. Gas leaks happen in private homes and businesses. And that's true. But this particular facility, like many, many others, has been repeatedly cited for violating safety and other regulations, coding and everything. It recently came under new management. And so, the thing is, okay, so there's the dark secret with these places is that they are really radically understaffed.
Yes.
When you walk, first of all, anyone can walk in and out of them. There's almost no security whatsoever. So if there ever was a desire to do a mass shooting, that'd be easy. But aside from that, there's no one when you need someone. And, if these weren't people who needed people, they wouldn't be there, right? My mom spent her last year in a nursing home. I had to put her there because she had Alzheimer's, and she broke her hip so badly that it separated from her upper leg. And so she kept getting up and obviously her whole body would crumble. Right. So I couldn't deal with that. There was no way physically I could handle it. Even if I just made this my full-time job, there was just no way. She needed 24-hour care. So, it was expensive. I remember it was, I think, $8,000 a month in Ohio. That came out. Right. That came out of my pocket.
Yeah.
It was not good. And it was, they were nice enough, but they were not well paid. These were minimum wage workers, documentation, maybe yes, maybe no. And in terms of the level of care, when something happened and you needed someone, they're just not around. And it's because they just don't have enough people. This is a massive for-profit business. And Wall Street loves this business because it's low cost, high income, and it's growing. And, because of demographics. And so I've got it. My first thought when I heard about this story was, if there was more staff, someone's going to smell a gas leak and is going to call 911, and the firefighters are going to come out and figure it out, and they're going to turn off the gas before this happens. I don't know about you, John. I've lived in apartment buildings where there were gas leaks.
Oh my gosh, yes.
FDNY came out right away.
Yes.
They turn off everything. They evacuate the building. I mean, that's a lot of what firefighters do. And
yes.
and so, it's about notification. The firemen can't do their jobs if they're not told, and there's no one to tell you. I mean, you can wander the halls of these places and not find a staffer. It's bleak. So, I mean, I've ranted on, in other fora and here, and I'll do it again. I think anything that is an essential service should be something that the government should be involved in directly.
I couldn't agree more.
Taking care of the elderly is an essential service. Americans need it. It's not optional, unless we're going to start putting them on ice floes and sending them off into, the great beyond. So, obviously you and I are, we could be 15 to 20 years away from needing these services. When I was there, the facility with my mom, in memory care, there was a dude who was 58 in there, and his wife had just put him in there. I mean, you'd look at him, you're like, 58. Wait, 58 years old, but he had early onset Alzheimer's. And it's like, so the point is, this shit can happen anytime. You get a stroke. I mean, that just happened to a colleague of mine. He got a stroke. He's younger than me. He's like in his mid 50s. And, I mean, I don't know if he'll ever be quite the same. I don't know if he'll ever be able to, really take care of himself. So it matters. I mean, it would be great if one of the two major political parties would quit sucking the teat of the nursing home industry that's worth billions of dollars a year and start helping us take care of our parents and grandparents.
Oh my God, I couldn't agree more. In Greece, my first wife's grandmother all of her kids had immigrated to the United States. So she was in this village of 600 people, all by herself. And so what they did was for the winter months, 4 months of winter, she was in a nursing home in the capital city of the island, Chios town. And then the rest of the time she was home. And so the nursing homes are different there. It's not like warehousing. It's like all your pals from the neighborhood spend the winter there. You eat together, you hang out together.
It's like a dorm.
It's like a dorm, right?
Yeah, it could be fun.
Yeah, and then you go back to your house when the weather warms up. But it's just because there's no heat in her house was built in the 1600s. It was made out of stone, and it was in the wall. It was in the wall that surrounds the village
that's cool.
To protect themselves from the Turks. Yeah, and there's the animals live on the ground floor and the people live on the second floor, that kind of thing. So the first floor was dirt. God, that's where I spent my first honeymoon. Oh my God. Anyway, that's a different story.
I remember that story.
Oh, it was bad. But it's different. It's not like warehousing like it is here.
Yeah,
where
it's
they
warehousing.
Just stick you in the nursing home and forget about it. And some nursing homes are nice if you have the money, and some nursing homes are, state run, and you're just as likely to be beaten and robbed in there as you are to be taken care of.
And it's, by the way, the taxpayers do end up paying for this. I mean, there's so many dirty secrets about this industry, and I'll just share one. So, for example, let's just say you don't have, you're like, you're listening and you're like, I don't have $8,000 a month. And it's like, well, don't you worry. Uncle Sam's got your back. So what they do is they say, okay, let's say, you have $10,000 in savings. You can go into the nursing home, and Medicare will basically you will have to pay that first month, the $8,000. And then when you're down to $1,500 as your total net worth in all of the entire world, that's all you have left after an entire lifetime of work and savings. Once you're down to 1,500, they call that the pay down level. Then Uncle Sam starts to pay, not you, so that you can, have a decent life. They won't pay you so you could stay home or have a nursing home. They pay a corporation to warehouse you. So that corporation wins no matter what. It's like they're getting the money either from you or they're getting it from Uncle Sam. They're doing great. And of course it's to their profit incentive is to not really to give you the bare minimum of care. And then, and I could go on and on about this, but it is a scandal. The French do it a lot better also. I mean, I'm glad we have an internationalist perspective on this show, because we can sort of say, like, there's a lot of things other countries do better than we do. And this is one of them. And, in France, my grandmother, she lived in public housing because her husband was a war hero in the resistance. So they paid for like everything for free, right? Like he never had to work after World War II. Which was not so great because it encouraged his alcoholism. But the point is that she was senile. And so they sent, instead of having her warehoused, they sent a home care attendant to her house an increasingly number of hours as she needed it, as she deteriorated. But basically, this lady kept her company, brought friends over, did her laundry, cooked for her. And guess what? Here's the key part. It's a lot cheaper to the French government to pay someone to do that. And also it's a job, right? You're providing a job for someone. So it's just like they do it better. I mean, there are people that you need to put into these facilities, but then there's, a lot of times you don't need to.
My dad had advanced Parkinson's disease. And I called him one day. I called my parents. It's funny. We were just talking about this morning. I called my parents every single day.
Yeah, I was the same way.
Every day, just to say
I used to feel like my mom needed that. Like,
yeah,
I had to call like several times a day just to keep her centered in her reality.
Right. So my dad had advanced Parkinson's. I called him one morning and he didn't answer the phone. And I thought, oh, that's odd, but okay, maybe he's in the shower. So I waited an hour and I called again and still no answer. So I called my mom. She was a school teacher, and she knew I would never call her during the school day and interrupt her teaching, but she answered and she says, "What's wrong?" I said, "I've called Dad twice and he's not answering the phone." So she went to the office. She said, "I have to rush home." She got home. He was on the floor of the kitchen. He was not hurt, but he had fallen down. And because he had Parkinson's, he couldn't get up. So he was on the floor for 4 hours thinking, well, eventually somebody is going to, notice, which is what happened. So we hired a woman to come to the house. And she made his lunch and she, helped him get to the bathroom, and she played Monopoly with him and chess, and they would sit and watch TV. And that's what he needed. He just needed somebody for 8 hours just to sit there.
I did one of those visiting angels things too, until before my mom fell. I was like, she wanted to die in her house too, and I wanted nothing more than that. That was, if she hadn't done, I was just like, don't fall. Yeah. Once you fall, it's a real problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's a scandal, and unfortunately, it's not even recognized as such. It's just reality.
It's not. Shame on us as a culture that we allow this to happen.
Yeah. It's not that we don't care. It's that it's our rugged individualism that makes us take it all upon ourselves and think this is my problem to deal with my family, instead of thinking, no, we all get old. This is a societal problem, obviously.
Indeed.
I mean, we're living in a fantasy here if we think this is just something we can shove behind closed doors and let, Wall Street profit off of. But that's exactly what it is. Few little things. Thanks, Accident, for the 100 Swedish kroner. The question for you from Accident, John, do you have any tips on how to deal with a bit of loneliness when you're deployed overseas abroad over the holiday season?
I have long struggled with depression, and Christmas is the worst day of the year for me. And so what I do is, and this is not the right solution for everybody. It is for me. I happen to be at my sister's house. We're having an awesome time right now, except for the 11 inches of snow that fell overnight. But normally what I do is I buy myself something great that I can cook that day, and I'll cook a special meal, even if it's just for myself. But frankly, I pretend that it's a normal day. It's not a special day. So I do all the stuff that is fun for me, and then I go for a very long walk. And it's become kind of a tradition to go on this Christmas Day walk. You'd be surprised the stuff that's open on Christmas Day. I'm surprised.
Chinese restaurants always.
Chinese restaurants and movie theaters, those are the go-tos for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But there was a Pier 1 Imports. Remember them? Just down.
Oh yeah, I miss Pier 1 and for all of your wicker and exotic seashell needs.
Wicker and rattan, anything you need made out of wicker and rattan. And they were always open on Christmas, of all things. But I was always surprised at how many people were out just walking around on Christmas Day. And so that always got me through it, without sort of falling into that depression. Plenty of music. Go out and treat yourself to a great Christmas, Chinese lunch, and then cook yourself a great Christmas dinner. Watch some TV, go to a movie, and you get right through it.
Yeah. Oh God, I don't know what people with depression did without TV. I mean, I love, we grew up with TV being considered like evil, like social media is today. But man, I love living when TV is around.
Yeah.
So we got a question here from more like a several part question from Stressed Telepath, appropriately enough. Thanks. I've been enjoying your show. Appreciate you taking the time to do it. Curious about your opinions about this. I think it's undeniable that a disproportionate. It's just undeniable that the murder of 2 American servicemen and a translator by a lone ISIS gunman is a brutal tragedy. However, a disproportionate response akin to when you compare it to Israel's bombing campaign in Gaza, which can be used by ISIS as a jihadist recruiting tool. Oh, for sure. Doesn't seem like religious zealots are capable of. Anyway, I take the point. This is that old,
I do too.
That quote that's always misattributed to Stalin about the death of one person is a tragedy. The death of a million people is a statistic, right? But I don't know I don't think we really know who said that, but
no, it
wasn't Stalin.
But it is a great quote. It was not Stalin, although everybody says it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a legitimate fear. Sure. Because we have to be, Joe Tough Guy on the block, and we have to use the iron fist. And they kill 2 American servicemen and a translator, and then we're going to go out and kill 50 or 60 people, which I think we already have done. I don't think it was 50 or 60. I think it was a dozen or so. We bombed a whole bunch of different sites associated with ISIS. Meaning some shack where some militant happens to be staying,
Maybe.
Or maybe not.
Yeah, it totally plays into their hands. I mean, whenever I hear about these strikes, I always think about this story my grandfather told me. So in occupied France during World War II, when the resistance got active starting in 1941, the Nazi occupation authorities established a new rule. They put posters all over France that said, if any German soldier is killed by the resistance, we will execute 50 French civilians. If any German officer is killed, we'll kill 100. So his cell got together and they were all like, oh fuck, what are we gonna do? And my grandfather goes, this is it. They fucking played into our hands. Now we ratchet it up. Now we kill more Germans. It's gonna get all the fence sitters and the moderates off the fence. They're going to get serious about joining the resistance. They're going to hate the Germans more. There's not going to be any love for Pétain anymore. This is yay. And I always thought, God, so cynical, but so true.
True. And that's what the Germans did in Greece. I mean, we have these very solemn days of recognition where, we recognize the massacre of Kalavrita, for example, or the massacre of this place, the massacre of that place, where, during the Second World War, one German soldier was killed or one German major was killed. And so they took all 150 men and boys from the village and murdered them inside the church and then set the church on fire.
Oh, yeah. That's like France. They did that shit all over Europe, of course. Yeah. They love that setting the church on fire thing.
Yeah, they do. They burned a lot of churches.
There's a famous massacre in southwestern France in Oradour, sur Glane, which is the name, where they burned. They destroyed they killed the entire population of the village, 642 people, and they put them inside a church and set it on fire. And I think one person escaped, like basically got out through the roof and then rolled off the roof and then managed to escape into a field. But
my cousin Mike, who just died, he's my dad's first cousin, lived in Silver Spring, Maryland for more than half a century. It's funny, he was my dad's cousin, first cousin, and his wife was my mom's first cousin. So we were related on both sides of our family. But anyway, Mike would proudly show me, whenever I would ask when I was a little kid, the bullet wound scar from when the Germans shot him in Rhodes in 1944. There was a German soldier stealing water out of the family well, and Mike was whatever he was, 16, I guess, and he was like, "Hey, that's our water. You can't steal our water."
And it's dry in Greece. That water's precious.
And the Nazi just pulled out a gun and shot him right through the stomach, and he lived to tell the tale.
Wow, who sewed it up? Do you know?
I don't.
Because I remember meeting guys in Afghanistan who had like crazy bullet wounds, and like basically it was like their buddy did it, like field medicine.
Yeah,
like,
with needle and thread.
Exactly. Yeah.
Another thing too. I wrote a piece years ago about my grandmother. My dad and his sister inherited from my grandmother two important pieces of property on the island of Rhodes. One was direct beachfront, and the other was a farm of about a little farmette of about 5 acres above the village going up the mountain. And he sold them. My dad and his sister sold them to another cousin in Rhodes. But the way we got that land was that my great grandfather was the chauffeur in a horse and buggy, was the chauffeur for a wealthy Greek Jewish man. And when the Nazis arrived, he begged my great grandparents to hide him. Of the 2,000 Rhodian Jews that were taken from what is now called the Square of the Jewish Martyrs in the old city of Rhodes, 14 survived the war. They were all sent to Auschwitz, all of them. 2,000 of them, 14 survived the war. My great grandparents kept him hidden in their 2-bedroom house down on the beach through the entire Nazi occupation, which was 3.5 years.
And if they'd ever been caught, they would have been killed.
Everybody in the family would have been executed.
Yeah.
And so when the war ended, he gave my grandmother these pieces of property that were in our family until 1991.
That's amazing.
I'm
That's
very
the
proud
opposite
of
of blood money. That's heart
right.
money. That's beautiful.
I'm very proud of them.
You should be. John, this is from Venkatesh. Thoughts on RAW, Indian intelligence? Apologies for recent bitter experience with India and Pakistan. Hilarious. And by the way, also thanks for Line Bar for the donation. Much appreciated. And also, okay, we'll talk about that later. Go ahead.
I never worked with Indian intelligence. I never had reason to. I will say that I went to India 3 times while I was with the CIA, and the Indians were just asses to me. Just because it's their, we talked about this earlier in the week or end of last week, whenever it was. Indians just dislike each other. They go through life just in this state of bitterness about who's better than whom and who's from a higher caste than the other guy.
I would imagine that it's higher caste people in Indian intelligence. No,
it has to be. Yeah, it has to be. But I never needed to work with them.
All right. Well, that's and by the way, thank you very much for the let's see. Thanks for the tips and 100 extra kroner for accident is thanking us. Thanks for the $20.
We have to thank MT16N7 for $100.
Oh shit! Happy Christmas to you.
That is Mike in Nottingham. Thank you, Mike. That's very generous. Thank you very much for that.
Much appreciated. Good morning and happy holidays, guys, from Soden. John, I was always intrigued by the death and career of William Colby. I think it's Colby. Yeah, Colby. And his death. Do you think his death was an accident? What was your take on it? And what did you hear around the water cooler?
I actually don't think his death was an accident. I think he was assassinated.
Wow.
He was fishing in a boat, and let me look up the details so I don't sound like an idiot. So here's Colby. Colby was very, very controversial because he was the DCI, the Director of Central Intelligence, during the Church Committee hearings.
Mm-hmm.
And for example, when Senator Church ordered him to preserve all of the MK Ultra documents, he literally went back to headquarters and ordered that all the documents be destroyed. He was charged with contempt of Congress. He was convicted. He was fined something like $150 or whatever it was. And
not even a slap on the wrist.
No, and members of the Senior Intelligence Service all donated money and raised many times the 150 and paid his fine for him. So in 1996, it says here, April 27th, 1996, Colby set out from his weekend home in Rock Point, Maryland on a solo canoe trip. His canoe was found the following day on a sandbar in the Wicomico River, a tributary of the Potomac, from about a quarter of a mile from his home. On May 6th, Colby's body was found in a marshy riverbank lying face down, not far from where his canoe was found. After an autopsy, Maryland's chief medical examiner ruled his death to be accidental. The report said that Colby was predisposed to having a heart attack or stroke from severe calcified atherosclerosis, and that Colby likely suffered a complication of the atherosclerosis, which precipitated him into the cold water in a debilitated state. And he succumbed to the effects of hypothermia and drowned. Maybe.
It's killing me right now. There's some spy movie that came out like maybe 15 years ago that has an allusion to that, where the dude, the corrupt DCI is found like dead in a canoe in the countryside somewhere.
Well, I'll tell you, in 2011, I remember this coming out. Colby's son came out with a documentary called The Man Nobody Knew. And he says that his father felt so guilty for the crimes that he committed as the director of CIA that he committed suicide and that he threw himself into the water. And
maybe the church committee would have helped him basically confront his guilt, even whether he wanted to or not. Sean, thanks for the money. We appreciate you too as well. And thank you very much for your kind words. So let's see. Let's talk about, since you mentioned a suspicious death, let's talk about the death of this Libyan general in Turkey. So, whenever someone like Paul Wellstone or someone like that dies in a small plane crash, you kind of go into two different places. One is like, small planes be falling out of the sky. That does happen. Yeah. On the other hand, it's also true that this is very convenient for certain people. In this case, I would say this general, his reputation was that he was trying to reunify, basically stitch Libya back together again. Yes. It's got like 3 or 4 governments. It's a failed state. It's the east is basically controlled by radical jihadis. The west is basically controlled by the rump of the successor central government of what used to be the Gaddafi government, sort of. I'm giving very rough sketches, and so he's on this plane trip. The plane goes down. He's the notable guy. It's certainly very convenient for those who have an interest in seeing Libya remain in its current state. On the other hand, small planes fall out of the sky, and of course it happened on Turkish territory. I mean, I know we don't know what happened here, but what are your thoughts on this, John?
The cui bono, right? So who benefits the most from this? I'm saying this tongue in cheek, but in all seriousness, the Greeks benefit the most, because this guy was the driving force in the rump Libyan states' very, very close relations with Turkey. And it was all about the natural gas that is off the coast of Cyprus. And so the Turks declared a 200-mile economic zone, and the Libyans declared a 200-mile economic zone, which allows them to take as much of the gas as they want. Nobody recognizes this except those two countries. The Greeks benefit. The Egyptians benefit because they hated this guy. The Israelis benefit because it throws the whole Turkish-Libyan anti-Israel gas exploration thing into question. So I think there are a lot of countries and a lot of people who are very happy today that this plane went down and killed not only him, but 6 of his top aides.
Yeah.
And now the Turks are back to square one when it comes to the gas exploration.
Libya stays in its current state for the foreseeable future.
That's right. I think there are a lot of people very happy about this.
Yeah, no doubt. Glasses are clinking in the corridors of power. DJ 928, thanks for the money. John, do you remember there was a secret Chinese police station in New York last year? I would take issue with calling it a police station, but a facility, let's say. How common do you think that may be with other countries on U.S. soil or even black sites?
I think that it's common for countries like Russia, for example. Well, we know for 100% fact that it's common for the Russians. The Chinese have been doing it for at least 20 years, maybe longer than 20 years. The Israelis absolutely positively are doing it. But you know that there's a danger there in that these people, if caught, would be considered non-official cover. They would be considered NOC officers, which means they have zero diplomatic immunity.
Right.
And they can be prosecuted to the fullest extent. So the Chinese were taking a real risk because not only were they non-official, but they were going out threatening people.
Yeah.
You know, and of course you're going to get caught. Somebody is going to go to the authorities. They're going to
in the middle of a major city.
In the middle of a major city in Chinatown of all places.
By the way, the Taiwanese do this too.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's kind of like the shadow wars that happen on, we think of, I mean, it's surprising to Americans to think that it happens on American soil, but it does. Yeah. I remember back in the 80s, my father-in-law told me about this story, but one of his Taiwanese independence activist friends living in Colorado, I looked this up, I verified it. He was a pro DPP guy. He got captured by basically a KMT assassin, came to Colorado and killed him and chopped his body into little pieces and left all the bits and pieces on his front lawn.
Oh my God. That's hardcore.
I know. I was like, that's like Afghan style. Yeah.
The Indians do it too in Canada. There's no evidence that they do it here in the United States, but they do it in Canada where they'll have, these Indians just like running an Indian restaurant and then doing hits on Sikhs after hours. Yeah.
Yeah. There's that crazy that Canada was up in arms over this shit like a couple of years ago.
They considered breaking diplomatic relations with the Indians. The Indians are murderous when they're overseas. They're perfectly happy just to go fly around the world and do hits.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't spend a lot of time thinking of India as a power or anything like that, but they think of themselves as one.
I'll add a little secret here, and I know I'm going to take shit for it later, but I don't care. I'm saying it anyway. In the 7 years I worked at Sputnik, the only time Moscow ever called my boss to slap me down was when I said what I just said about the Indians going around the world and killing political opponents, which they do, especially in Canada.
It's well documented.
And they were like, you can't criticize India. We have good relations with India. And I said, my contract says I can criticize anybody I want. Yeah. And so the whole kerfuffle just lasted a day and then it went away.
That's funny. So let's see some comments. What's our interest in the Ukraine war? We can segue to Ukraine. What's in it for us, being that Ukraine is not a NATO country and not really an ally? Is it rare earth minerals? That's part of it. But I mean, but for me, John, I think this is really just an opportunity. It's Cold War 2.0. It's an opportunity to fuck with the Russians. It's like right on their border. It's the same. It's as if the Chinese or the Russians had the opportunity to corrupt Mexico or Canada and turn them against us. It's disruption. It's about that. It's about like, hey, this'll fuck with them. It's like Brzezinski and fucking with the Russians in Afghanistan, right? I mean, Is there anything more to it than that, really? I don't think so.
I don't think so. I don't think so. And see, this is where I fear the next Democratic president, because the Democrats, just as a matter of party policy now, don't want to improve relations with Russia.
No.
And the Russians don't care one way or the other, because they've made it all up by
they're okay.
They're okay, because they've so vastly improved their own relations with China and India that it doesn't really matter for them. They've turned east rather than west.
So I guess while we're talking about this, shall we touch upon this the latest and the Russia-Ukraine negotiations? So It's so funny. The U.S. basically now there's a result, the 20-point plan, which is not the result of Russia involved in this at all. This is the negotiations between the U.S. and Ukraine. And so anyway, among the highlights of this are a road toward EU membership. Talk about pushing on an open door. Putin has said for years he's totally cool with Ukraine joining the EU. In fact, it probably would benefit Russia to have an EU trading partner right on their border. There would be NATO-style security guarantees, which the Russians may or may not be okay with. And then the real news here is that the UKIs have agreed to create a DMZ. The exact details are not 100% clear, but not only in obviously the areas that are occupied by Russia, but including in the eastern part of rump Ukraine. Basically, the lines would be, as you and I have talked about forever, the lines are going to be frozen, when the combat ceases, that will be like the equivalent of a Pakistan-India line of control. It will sit. And then but whatever's, the remaining 80% or so of Ukraine that's still under Kyiv's control, the eastern part of that would be a DMZ, which, again, you and I have talked about how that would be a likely outcome. I think Russia probably will be okay with that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so too. The truth is, eventually there's going to be a deal. Eventually, there has to be a deal, because the Russians are winning the war. And so the Ukrainians have, a real necessity for some sort of negotiated settlement. We've all been saying since the day Russian troops crossed the border that the deal would have to include some sort of territorial concession. Mm-hmm. So after all these deaths, after all these months, here we are at the point of territorial concession.
John, we are not smarter than the ancients, right? Like the Hittites and the Assyrians and those ancient people, they got tired of this kind of bloodshed. And like at a certain point, there's several incidents in which they decided, okay, what we're going to do is, instead of all having the battle, what we're going to do is we're going to line up in the field of battle as if we were going to do the battle. And then we have auditors from both sides count the number of weapons, count the number of men, look at the terrain and say, okay, so the Hittites would have won this one. Okay, all right. So you Assyrians, you give the Hittites this town, and we all go home and no one dies.
That's, and there are countless examples of this in the Bible, right? Yes. I mean, this is even in the Bible. They're smarter than we are.
They were smarter than we are. Yeah. Thanks for the Christmas greetings. $50 from Lorraine Frost, and
thank you.
And I'm sure Robbie shares your Christmas wish. Tariq, Ted, it's a socioeconomic issue, but do you believe it's also a cultural issue in Western countries regarding taking care of elderly parents? 100%. Yeah, we have this whole even the idea that our kids turn 18 or 21 and then they're on their own. My father gave my stepsister what was her 18th birthday gift? He gave her luggage, basically go fly free. I mean, basically the multi-generational thing is just not a thing in the United States. The Waltons is dead, and it's cultural. We feel that we don't have to have any ties to our families. Yeah. It's really toxic and foul. I mean, I'm so against it. I would love to live in a house with 4 generations and in a compound where we all take care of great granny and the great grandkids are born. I'd be I love that.
In Greece, and this is very much a cultural thing, Greeks build multi-generational homes. They'll buy a small piece of land and they'll build a 4-unit apartment building. So the parents are on the top floor, and the kids, when they get married and they have kids of their own, whatever, they have the 3 apartments underneath. You see that absolutely all over the country, including in Athens. When I first moved to Athens in, 1998, I stayed in an apartment building for the first 3 or 4 months. And we were the only non-family members who were in the apartment building. So the owners, the old folks were up at the top. Their kids had the other floors, and then we had one. We have an ad, I think, huh?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think, we have an ad? Okay. Is it, okay, so Robbie, whenever you want to put that up, let me know. MT16, again, thanking you, John already thanked you for the $100, but could I send you some Blue Chew? I had to look up what that is. Did you know? It's ED medications.
Yeah, no,
I did not know. And John, how much do you love gold? LOL.
It go to johnlovesgold.com. That's johnlovesgold.com for your free booklet. Do you have gold in your IRA?
Actually, I'm not against owning gold as part of your investment portfolio at all. I think it's not a bad part of the mix. But anyway, here we go. Still haven't tried 1775 coffee. Now it's your shot. The 1775 starter kit just dropped, only 1,000 units. You're getting the bold dark roast that hits hard, the smooth medium roast, and the Vitality mushroom coffee for clean energy and laser focus. No crash, all single origin, small batch, toxin free, and mold free. Plus, you're also getting a gold spoon clip because freedom isn't scooped with plastic. A frother strong enough to stir up your coffee and your mother-in-law's opinions, and a black 1775 tumbler. $170 worth of coffee and gear, yours for $99. This is for the ones who've been watching 1775 blow up on Rumble, wondering if it's actually worth it. Spoiler, it is. Robbie drinks it and likes it. Go to 1775coffee.com/studio and grab your starter kit before they're gone. Bold means clean fuel and a morning routine that stands for something just like Rumble does. Okay, a few more comments to hit and then back to the thanks for the $5, Tariq. Grateful for you all in the show. I get more informed and gain perspective every show. Can't get enough of Ted's East Asia anecdotes. Central Asia. Merry Christmas to all celebrating. John, what do you think the future is of Greece? That's a very open-ended question. By 2030.
Oh yeah, that's, on the one hand, I'm optimistic in that they really, really have pulled out of the economic collapse of 2008 to 2000.
Yeah, they're no longer one of the pigs. Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain.
So they've pulled out of that. The Prime Minister Konstantin Mitsotakis, while conservative, has just worked miracles economically. They've even computerized the land registry, which is just going to change life in Greece. Taxes are a little too high compared to other European Union countries. Those have to come down. But the real problem that Greece faces is one of population shrinkage, not population growth. There's been a just devastating brain drain with educated Greeks. I know a lot of them. Educated Greeks going to the UK, the US, Canada, Australia, Germany, even Turkey. 1,500 Greek doctors over the last 10 years have emigrated to Turkey in search of.
How do you think treated there? Do you think it's like it's okay, it doesn't matter, or do you think they get discriminated against?
No, I'm told that it's been okay. I'm told that it's Greek Americans that keep these conflicts going. Who knows?
I could see that.
I will admit that
it's sort of like Israel, and it's sort of like Israel and Palestine before 2000. You could see them. They went into business together. Yeah. They knew they were friends with each other. They're so similar. They eat the same food.
Yeah, it's true. So if they can lure educated Greeks back to the country, I think things are going to go very, very well.
Pesty, Menace, and Race 2020, thank you so much for gifting subscriptions to the show. Much appreciated. And let's see.
May I add one thing? Longtime listener just wrote, Greece is becoming an Airbnb for rich tech bro remote workers. That is true. And that's also a problem. There was an article in Gatimerini, which is like the New York Times of Greece, just a couple of days ago, saying that in Athens, Greeks are buying almost none of the real estate, the good real estate. It's all being bought by Israelis, Russians, and Chinese. And they make all of it Airbnb, which then prices Greeks out of the rental market.
Well, that's happening globally, right? I mean, there's in the 10022 zip code, which is the lower Upper East Side of Manhattan. And I know that sounds like a conflict, but basically, if you just think of some of the richest, like, Fifth, Madison, Park Avenue in like the 50s and 60s and 70s, that's that zip code. It's astonishing. It's basically luxury blight. The vast majority of these units in those neighborhoods are empty, being warehoused by foreign investors, Israelis, Russians, Saudis, people like that. And no one really lives there. I mean, it's kind of like hard for a business like a dry cleaner or a hardware store or a deli to keep going there. Even, a fancy boutique can't really make it because there's really kind of like no foot traffic. It's bizarre. I've got to ask you about this Alternative for Deutschland, AfD.
Oh, yeah.
So they have they've been winning some elections there in Germany. There's a bunch of far right lawmakers, and basically the long and the short of it is that the centrists, in particular, not really the lefties, but the centrists are accusing the AfD guys of asking for too many questions. Basically, they have the prerogative, they have the right to say, listen, can you tell us about this and that, about our defense? Tell us about our drone capabilities. Tell us where exactly are our facilities? What are they doing? What are the strategies? What are the tactics? And they ask the Ministry of Defense for all this stuff. And so it's aroused suspicion on the part of the centrists, whether it may be legit or not, that like, why are you asking all these detailed questions? And of course, I'm thinking, wow, wouldn't it be nice to have lawmakers who actually like did their homework and wanted to know the details of their jobs, unlike ours who, signed the USA Patriot Act without ever even having read it. But anyways, so there's no evidence, to be clear here, whatsoever that any member of the AfD is spying for Russia. But the accusations are, you're giving this in, you're asking these questions because you're going to download this to your Kremlin cronies, aren't you? Thoughts?
Yeah, I think that this is just what we face today. Anytime somebody doesn't like your politics, and listen, I hate the politics of the AfD. I really do. I think it's a neo-Nazi organization. But it's so easy just to point the finger at your political opponents and say, Russian agent. I mean, you and I get that all the time. Russian agent. And it's like, no.
Or asset.
Which I wrote an op-ed one time when Hillary Clinton called Tulsi Gabbard a Russian asset. The word asset has a very specific meaning in intelligence. It means you have been formally recruited and by a foreign intelligence service, and you have agreed to accept money for information.
That's treason.
It's treason.
It pisses me off, honestly.
It's a death penalty offense.
I get you and I both know what litigation is like, but it pisses me off that Tulsi Gabbard didn't do the right thing and sue Hillary Clinton for libel.
She should have sued, and that's what I said in the op-ed. Tulsi Gabbard had been defamed, and she should have filed a lawsuit.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I get why you don't. It's a pain in the ass. It becomes your life. It's like you're just like being asked the same fucking question thousands and thousands of times.
I sued Louise Mensch, and she settled as fast as she possibly could for the same reason. She called me a Russian asset and said that I had been convicted of espionage and treason, and she was throwing out all these red meat words. And man, I sued her so fast she didn't know what happened. And then she's begging my attorney.
But what's good here is when you sued her, right? She had competent counsel. So her lawyer advised her appropriately to do the right thing and come out of the foxhole with her hands up.
That is right.
Your biggest problem as a plaintiff, if you have a great case, is if your defendant is represented by assholes and fools, and they're like, we can fight this, or they're just trying to get the hourly billables, and so they keep feeding a line of shit to their client. And there you both are bleeding out financially and in terms of your time and your energy. for nothing, for something that could have been resolved quickly.
That's right.
It's like not talked about a lot. I mean, I always want my opponent to be well advised, in any kind of legal battle. I do not want them to have a stupid lawyer, because that's the worst. Merry Christmas to you too, Sean Pat. Thanks for the $20. Greece is becoming an Airbnb for rich tech bros. It says longtime listeners. It sounds like we're number 8 on Rumble. Thanks everybody.
Oh, great.
And let's see. Longtime listener also says Trump calls those Democrats treasonous and the liberals freak out. HRC calls Tulsi treasonous and the liberals run with it.
Yeah,
that's true.
Exactly.
Well, because Tulsi was not a member of a protected class. I have this whole thing I wrote a couple of weeks ago in my op-ed, in my syndicated column. It's like there are protected classes. You and I don't belong to a protected class. Then there's people who are in a protected. Hillary Clinton is in the protected class. Prince Andrew, until recently, in a protected class. Nothing bad can happen to them no matter what they do. Jeffrey Toobin, protected class. Nothing bad can happen to him. It's weird.
Yeah, agreed.
So I guess, I don't know what German libel laws are like, right? But, the AFD guys, they have that option. And I really regret that I've never availed myself of this. Next time someone fucks with me and it's on the internet, I will sue them in England, where the libel laws are good. That's
an easy win.
Yeah, it's an easy win.
Right.
So the AFD guys, they could go to the UK. And these accusations have appeared online. So therefore, they're in the UK. So they have jurisdiction.
Yeah, that's right.
I should have sued the LA Times in England.
Yeah.
And I should have sued them in federal court. My stupid lawyer told me to sue in state court, which was a mistake.
When you were telling the story, I was thinking that I was wondering myself why you didn't file in federal court.
He said he was after the money. He thought this was going to be a $20 to $50 million lawsuit, and apparently federal court civil court judgments are much lower than California state court judgments. So he just thought he's going to buy a super yacht with the money. That's what it was. But we opened ourselves up to the California's anti-SLAPP statute when we filed in California Supreme Court or Superior Court or whatever it's called, Superior Court, and that was the fuck up. It was a major fuck up. But part of me's happy it's over, because it was 5 years of my life.
Yeah, it's a long time.
It's a long time. And you just get I remember before I sued, my first thought was, do I want to be talking about this exact incident for the next 15 years? And, so that's always the jurisdiction of the question here. All right. So everyone, it's 9:59 a.m. here on the East Coast, which means it's done for this hour, but we will be back Friday, the day after Christmas, Boxing Day, the 26th. I can say that a million different ways, 9 a.m. Eastern time. Be here or be square. We are here Monday through Friday. This will be a 2-hour show, 1 hour of regular news and commentary. Then we're going to do call-ins. It's going to be the same format as last time. I apologize. I didn't bring Robbie on because we were moving so quickly. I lost track of time. But Robbie, so tune in on 9 o'clock and we'll explain the whole thing. You'll be able to call anytime after 10 a.m. Eastern time on Friday. TMI show with Ted Rall and Manila Chan. That's me coming up right now. So stay tuned. If you're on Rumble, you'll just slide right in. John, have a happy Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Have a good time up there. Avoid the snow.
Thank you.
And I will talk to you later.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.